Zivy, as well as in general. Like, I want to start off first with what led to we working on Zivy. A little bit about me. I kind of started my career way back in 2006 as a developer, and then post MBA switched to the product side of the roles, and I worked with large companies like Oracle, HSBC, Goldman. But since 2016, I'm working with startups. In my last role before starting Zivy, I was with Razorpay. I was the director of products there, building B2B neobank, and that's where the idea of Zivy started with my co-founder Prashant, who was on the engineering side. We were working together on building the B2B neobank at Razorpay, and Razorpay was like, I think, one of the companies who were using Slack like very heavily. And the whole culture that the Razorpay has is on like full transparency, which meant a lot of discussions to happen on public channels, not on private channels, not even DMs, and founders would talk about that in town halls. It was amazing culture that Razorpay kind of built out for startup ecosystem in India. And of course, with as the team size increased and as COVID happened and things went async, uh, the obviously the amount of messages, right, that just exploded. I think quite a few folks, like maybe all of you would have experienced it yourselves in your own organization that you're working in. That Slack is a powerful tool. It has in terms of easing out communication. Now, if you just kind of compare like days back, like 10 years back, right, like a decade ago, mostly work communication would be on emails, right, and things would be slower on the communication side, and not everyone is so comfortable, say, writing really good emails. You need to be articulate, right? And what it meant was that people, say, who are not in leadership roles and all, they would not find, say, so much platform to really voice out their opinions or discuss things in a very transparent way. I think with tools like Slack, which it kind of democratized the whole communication, it just became a lot more easier for people to just like communicate with each other, because now you can just do it in form of chats rather than having to kind of really think about and articulate and like write like long structured conversations, right? Which is great for communication. The flip side of that, though, is as you kind of communicate more and more, it becomes harder to be on top of things, right? So we found it harder as the team grew in Razorpay, and we spoke to a lot of folks around different companies, not only in India as well as like across the globe. Folks in US, Europe, in fact, Southeast Asia, other companies as well. And wherever we found like people using Slack or otherwise, like for example Teams as well, right, like finding it like really hard to be on top of things, especially for people who manage multiple things, right? So say if you're an IC and then you're just working on one thing at a time, like then maybe it not really bother you so much. But say if you're in if you're a lead, right, and you're managing multiple things or managing multiple people, or you're a senior IC who's kind of driving projects, multiple initiatives across the org, right? And have to coordinate with multiple folks across different departments, not only say in tech or product, but also like in business and operations and legal and all. It just becomes tougher to be on top of things, right? Which means that your productivity, is impacted. Your amount of notification that comes in, the interruption that happens, just kind of there's a lot of context switching that happens constantly and takes away your thinking time, the focus time that you need as a person to kind of do something, like finish up your work. And of course, like within Slack, there are a lot of features which are available to kind of manage that to some extent, right? So you can obviously mute channels, you can create lists, and a lot of things got developed over the last few years to for people to have more control on controlling that noise. But at the same time, what we observed in our research, talking to a lot of users, is that a people are not really aware of all those features, and so they kind of miss out on like things that they can actually do. B, even with all of that, they sometimes still like find it hard to be on top of things. So the aim with Zivy is to kind of give them more time, more focus time, by we kind of becoming their partner in terms of triaging their Slack communication and presenting to them what is really important, and the rest of the thing which is not important can actually be taken care kind of later, right? So that's kind of the genesis why we started CV. In case if anyone have any questions in between, like feel free to just interrupt me. Happy to take any questions in between the presentation rather than just taking it towards the end. Yeah, cool. Let me just share my screen. I just wanted to show you kind of quick sort of stats that we had kind of collected through studies that came out on this, right? So with that context and picture, right, like what has happened in today's environment is that it has become a lot more easy, as I mentioned, to send out messages, right? But what happens is that there are few people who are the orchestrator of changes in the organization. They are the receiving end of all these messages, right? So you will find, say, a lead or a manager, right, getting a lot more messages coming their way. And some of you, you would have maybe transitioned from an IC role to manager role, would have experienced that in your own career as well. Which means, like, this person who has to guide individuals, teams to make something happen, they're generally constantly distracted, right? And they spend a lot of time on Slack because work is happening there, and would not like would be proper for this person to say keep asking for updates or keep asking the same questions, even though it is available on Slack, right? And people have put in their texts out there. So in terms of now what's happened in this, like set of middle managers specifically, is that they spend a lot of time on Slack, and they are that leads to delays as well, right? Because they also have a lot of other things to do, which is in terms of planning, as well as like other meetings that they have to be in part of decision making. And this layer is kind of translates all the decisions, say, from the top management and make the execution happen on the ground, right? A lot of things actually gets lost because things are very chaotic for them, and that leads to kind of a sense of mental overload because there's constant context switching that happens. There was this beautiful book that I've read. It's called Human Givens. It talks about the psychologists have pointed out that, like when you get interrupted, it takes quite a while to come back to a state where this interruption kind of dies out, right? So even though during the day, as we get like interruptions, then it might feel like fine, I'm just kind of managing it. But at the end of the day, you will feel that exhaustion in a way because you're constantly getting interrupted by notifications, and
Sorry,
this.
sorry for interrupting. Can you hide the screen sharing bar? Yes.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. So so this is the kind of stats that, like even though you may not know exact numbers, and this has come out in like service, but you can relate to it, right? Because it kind of happens to a lot of us. And typically that's what, like what you do is when you are on Slack, and like you start your day with like just reading through some messages that came in, right? And especially, say, if you're a distributed team, global team, you would get messages from your different time zones, teams in different time zones also. um, and then you're trying to kind of try get to those things and get to your set of priority of the that you have planned and things that came up, say, overnight. And then from there you try and find some space towards like early afternoon in terms of getting stuff done. But this constant notifications keeps coming in because people who obviously would have questions that they kind of go about completing their work. And but this, like constant barrage of notifications don't really end. There are different ways people actually try and manage it. Like there are people who would just like batch their notifications reading, like there is like mute Slack, and they would just go through any notification at the point of time. Or sometimes, like people who are generally want to be on top of everything like instantly, then they would do things like muting some kind of channels, but or have keyword based notifications, but they'll typically check a message as it comes, right? Now with Zivy, what we are trying to do is building a AI co-pilot of sorts for people who are busy, and we would process notifications coming your way, and then present them into very simple things in terms of one set of messages is basically just your actionables, right? So people would ask you for, say, if your manager, you need to approve something, say some tool access or some decision that you need to make, some approval that you have to give, right? So that kind of comes on actionable. So it's like important stuff that you need to act on. And then there's like FII sort of messages, which is like an update. And this is sort of messages where which are important and need to be aware of them, but there is no, right now, there is no actionable for you. You don't really have to complete anything, but you need to be aware of them, right? But that's also important. And then there's a low priority, which is like everything else, right? So which is not important, some discussions going on in the random channel or in general channel, things that you can just skip. It's not really urgent. If you have time in the day or later in the week, and just go through them kind of later, right? This is the first level of kind of triaging that we do. I'm going to switch over to the actual demo instead of the PPT to kind of show you it in action. How does it really work? So, so this is the Playground app version. This is like sample Slack messages, but it is all the functionality that you would experience if you sign up with Zivy. So I was mentioning, this is an actionable stack, right? This is sort of a list view of that. You can actually go through this messages very quickly and see like what you need to act on. Or you can switch over to other stacks, right? So you can also choose to have a different view, which is like the focus view. I kind of personally like this view because then I don't really have I'm not getting distracted by other messages which is there in the stack. I'm just looking at one thing at a time, right? And then as I'm kind of going through them, then I'm taking any action, right? The kind of actions that you would take is basically either you need to reply to those messages. So say in that Zv actually helps you in terms of have some draft responses created. So obviously we're using Gen AI to kind of have few options for you, and that you can actually use, and if you want to make some changes, you can make those changes. And the other advantage of the other thing about this is that as you use Zv, and then as you kind of send your responses in, Zv learns from the kind of way that you write messages, right? Because everyone has their own style of writing. So it kind of fine tunes the draft messages for you, and then becomes something which is the draft messages will be in your tone, right? So that's how Zv kind of helps you write messages faster. So you can just send a reply to the message, and we have two-way integration with Slack. So just send out the messages to the Slack to the person on the thread. It will go off as you are sending it, right? Apart from that, you can do things like if you want to cater to this kind of later, so you can just simply mark this as a to-do. So that kind of goes away from your stack. Don't have to remember anything, and goes and sits here, right? So the message will come here for you to kind of act on this later. The other set of things that you can actually do is which came off strongly from our user feedback, our beta user feedback, is that people tend to forget the follow-ups that they have to do, right? So for example, you asked your colleague for something that you wanted to get done by, say, next week Tuesday, right? Now you not remember to follow up until you take a mental note or write it down. If you take a mental note, most likely you'll forget with all the chaos. So what people would do is they like DM themselves on Slack to remind themselves, or set up a reminder, or save this as a later on the Slack, and then there are various ways people kind of do it, right? But typically, even with all of that thing and so many things going on, generally, firefighting happening on a daily basis at work, people tend to forget it, and then delays happen, right? So with follow feature, what we with help in our users is that you set up a follow up, right, and just forget about it. Once that is done, Zv intelligently follows up with the person, the recipient of the message, right? The way it does is that we just not follow up only once, but overall, 3 times if there is no responses, and it is done in a way which doesn't feel like a bot, like in a following up, feels like a human following up, and if the person, right, has responded, say, to the, for the first time when they got the follow-up message, and the response could be, hey, I've acknowledged it, right? So, and that may not be good enough, because acknowledgement, yeah, is good, but what this person, the user, is trying to do is getting some action being done, right? So until this that's being closed, this is the response that the user, the recipient sends, right? We process it and like ensures that, whether we should be doing further follow-ups, or we should end this follow-up, complete this follow-up. And in this case, if the follow-ups, have not been responded to, not been acted on, we also escalate that follow-up back to the user, right? So in which case, if you go to the later tab, you'll be able to see the follow-ups that is kind of currently running, and you can also see escalations, right? So escalations is a set of follow-ups which have not been acted upon by the recipient even after multiple follows by Zv, and which means that a manual intervention or human intervention is actually required, right? So it takes away all the mental overload from your mind, in terms of remembering things, right? So you just said follow up and forget about it, right? And then typically after that, whatever general actions you do, right? You can dismiss this message, you can snooze this message for later, all of that sort of basic functionalities that typically people would do, that all is available. One more very popular feature that people use on Zv is scheduled time on calendar. So you can directly, we have integration with Google Calendar, and you can simply just go ahead and with single click select a time and just kind of set up, uh, convert the task on the calendar directly, and then dismiss the message. um, I'll take a pause here in case there are any questions. If not, then I'll continue. Sanjit, is there anything else? Any questions so far?
No, Vivek, I just have one. So you mentioned about follow-up. Let's say the user has not acknowledged the message the first time. Is it
Yeah.
gonna send the same message again, or that will be at like a little
Yeah.
different? What?
Yeah, it will be different. So that's the reason what I mentioned is that it's not going to be like something which looks like very dumb bot type of follow-up. Is going to be like if there has been not response no response to the first follow-up message, the second will change, right? Or say if the recipient had acknowledged the message but have not responded, then also the message will be different, right? So depending upon if they have taken any action, not taking, what kind of action have they taken, it does an intelligent follow. The second message will be different, and third message will be different.
Okay. And around the Google Calendar integration, so it will automatically send invite to whoever we are having conversation with, right?
Okay, so this Google Calendar. Okay, I think the question that you're asking is, can I set up meeting with others directly from Zv on that particular
Right.
content? Okay. No, so this is right now Zv is a single user tool. So this is sets up a task on your calendar directly, so that you don't really have to block or time yourself manually, and you can set aside time for you to work. It doesn't really have right now multi-user capability, so you can't send out meeting invites to other people in your company from Zv yet. You can just block time on your calendar.
Okay, understood.
Yeah. Also, from a one thing that I forgot to mention, right? Also, from a response perspective, since we're building this for users who are heavily using Slack, and that is the audience that we're catering to. All the editor functionalities that you have on Slack, we have kind of mimicked that here on Z, so that you don't really feel that difference when you actually use Zv to do replies. All of that, the way code blocks are done, the keyboard shortcuts are there. In terms of editor, everything is exactly same. So for you switching from Slack, say, to Zv to type things out, you'll not feel that difference. Yeah.
Perfect. We have one question. Arjun is asking, Uh, about security, does it also encrypt the message on the fly when it is showing on its platform?
Yeah. So we our complete application is hosted on AWS, and we have obviously TLS on the transit as well as in the rest, right? So our database are encrypted. We use RDS, and whatever security, in terms of the data handling that we have learned from Razorpay, and we used to kind of uh, anyone who's worked in fintech would know amount of checks and audit that happens from banks on a fintech, but kind of learned a lot of things from there and applied all of that learning from Zivy from day one, because we understand these are internal work messages that are very sensitive in nature. So we have taken all of that into consideration, when of building out the whole architecture in terms of data handling. In fact, in terms of, say, wherever we have to send out data for processing to Anthropic, for example, to Claude, we would anonymize the data, and obviously everything is through APIs. We also have done our certifications in terms of SOC 2 and ISO and GDPR to give that additional comfort in users' mind in terms of how seriously we take the data at Zivy in terms of handling, because all of this is sensitive data, right? Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah, that does.
Um, Yeah, one more thing on reply is that sometimes if it's a thread, then whatever reply goes on a thread, right? But sometimes the messages are on channel, and you want to create a thread on that channel, right? I may not really have an example here, but you can actually send out a message as a thread instead of a channel message, or in case of DMs also, you can actually send out it as a thread, create a thread from ZB. Um, Apart from all of this, taking receiving, consuming messages which are important, the ZV kind of sends up to you. But the one thing is that obviously you don't really have to do anything when you integrate with ZV, the single click integration. Once you integrate, then you will start receiving the messages from there on, whatever messages that you get on Slack here on in one of these categories. And we have worked on algorithms and trained data over the last. We have been working on ZV since early 2023, so it's been quite a while in terms of getting the classifications right. It took us quite a while to kind of get it right. But apart from that, we give a lot more control to users, right? So if you actually want to define your own, sort of prompts, some rules, right, as to what goes into actionables and FIs and no priority, you can actually write your own kind of phrases, right? For example, hey, any kind of customer escalation that comes on support channel, should come on actionables, right? It's also possible that we may not be part of certain public channels, but you want ZV to kind of look at them and then bring up those to your attention. You can define those as, think of them as prompts that you send to any LLMs, right? So apart from whatever training that we have done, the modeling that we have done, right, we'll take this into consideration as well and give it a higher weightage while we populate the message to fall into one of these categories. Yeah. Apart from that, so you can also choose to compose messages. So sometimes you would want to initiate something, not only respond to existing messages coming your way. So you can do that with Zivy as well. Send it to the particular user or a user group, right? And it will send out the message to your Slack workspace. So largely this is wall or all our we have built so far, and there's so many things that we are kind of doing right now in the pipeline, just to give you guys a sense of where it's heading. And Sangeet had mentioned in his introduction in terms of Slack, obviously working on Slack AI, and it solves certain kind of challenges that a lot of users, actually general users of Slack face, right? For example, if you want to do a summarization of a channel or a thread, Slack AI kind of provides that out of the box, which is great. And of course, we also have summarization and all that. But typically with Zivy, what we have tried to do is build something very specific to a set of users who are power users of Slack, because we felt that power users Slack who actually use Slack very heavily, and irrespective of the size of the organization, right? Our initial thesis was that this will make sense only for organizations where there are like 50 or more employees at least, because then itself like a lot of like messages will enough messages will be there, the volume of messages will be high in those kind of organizations. However, in our experience, as we kind of start to speak users to users and they had of using Zv, right, we have found companies as small as 3 to 4 people also finding Zv useful, simply because they were like completely remote and all the communication was like async. Because they were remote, they had to do a lot of documentation. The culture, it was heavy on documentation culture, so everything like Slack was like very kind of noisy for them. And whenever they wanted to have focus time, they would actually mute Slack or quit Slack and do the work and then open Slack, right? So what we have built is basically very specifically at this point of time for users who are like are heavy users of Slack. So if you get like 50 to 100 notifications in a day, you will appreciate Ziri. But if you get like maybe 10, 15 notifications a day, maybe you will not, like you won't need, because you don't really have that noise problem. You'll not have that like need to use something like Ziri at this point of time. We also plan to build a lot of other things as we are kind of working towards more features and feedback from users in terms of auto creating to dos for you, right? So you don't really have to like read through the threads yourself and figure things out as to what really is a task that I need to do here, right? We Zivy can actually create those things automatically for you, and you can actually review those things and say, hey, fine, yeah, this looks like a task, right? Similarly, on the follow-ups, we have actually piloting another version of follow-ups with another company that you're using Zv, which is basically you do your work on Slack, like whatever stuff that you do, Zv will figure out this is your commitments to others also, right? Like where where you need to follow up. So there'll be like a suggested sort of follow-ups that will come up, and you don't really have to manually and go set things up. So all the things that we are currently working on in pipeline are from the perspective that the user whom we are catering to is a super busy person and have a lot of influence in the org in terms of their decision, their time actually matters. And how do we save time for them, and more than time, the mental overload, right? They don't have to remember anything. We will tell them, hey, this deadline is coming up. Hey, like this is maybe this could be a task. This is the follow up that needs to happen. Hey, you had committed something to someone, right? And maybe help them with like even completing those tasks, right? So this is the direction that we are going towards. Sort of like AI powered co-pilot for you, for specifically for people who organizations use Slack very heavily. I'll talk about this one more thing and kind of stop the demo and then like open to questions. So this is the web app version of this, and you can also install this as a PWA and use that. So this I use PWA as well on my desktop. The other way to kind of use Zivy, which also came from our users, was just in terms of just having Zivy within Slack itself, right? So we have Zivy as a Slack bot also. So whatever you have seen on web app, about 80% or 89% of functionality will be available is available right now on Zivy Slack bot also. So all your actionable FYIs are already here. You can take any action as he was showing it to you, like snooze it or move as a to do, set up follow-ups, look at all the messages that you have acted on in the history, right? So all of that is kind of available on the Slack bot itself. So in case you find it difficult to kind of switch from, at least in initial days, from Slack to a different web app completely, you can actually experience Zivy directly within Slack, and then like use web app for more higher like more functionalities. I'll stop sharing my screen now, Sanjeev, and open up to any questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Vivek. So we have few questions. Let's move to the last part of it. Uh, so Tarun is asking that if we can explore Zv like a sandbox or something that we can have installed in our workspace.
So we have a 30-day free trial. So you can always like use Ziggy for 30 days, like and like use it. we want to use. Um, yeah. So
Awesome. Uh, so Arjuna asking, does your AI model get trained from the messages posted in the workspace or by the messages Zivy creates for its user?
uh, if I get the question right, like basically, does ZV gets better as we use it? Like, does as we kind of send messages and through ZV, does it get better and gets more personalized?
Right.
Yeah, it does, right? So, but not only because of the messages that you're sending, but also kind of actions that you're taking on Zivy, right? For example, if you're getting certain kind of messages on certain topics or certain people or certain teams, right, which you are constantly dismissing, then we would know that maybe this is not a priority for you right now, and we would like maybe suppress that from, say, if you're from an important to a non-important category. In fact, one of the things that I can actually do is do just, I forgot to show you, but you can just do a thumbs up and thumbs down on the messages, and the model learns from that, right? The aspect around the message that you send, what it helps with is just finding the tone of draft messages that we can actually send out to you and say, hey, maybe this is better framing of because a lot of time people also struggle with like the right articulation of what to send out. There is where it kind of helps understanding the tone of the user, and once we get the tone, we don't really have to really uh, change it much, because generally basis few messages also you get to know what is the general pattern that user actually uses, the person uses, right? That is how it gets personalized as you kind of use it.
Awesome. So Arjuna is asking, also is the beta program for the existing Zivy users only? I'm
Uh,
not sure what's this beta program is. Can you also?
okay. No, so when I say beta, I meant like they were as they were developing the product, we had a lot of early users who actually helped shape up the product. So things that we have now building, right? A lot of actually feedback came in from the beta users, right? But now Zivy is publicly available, and everyone can just sign up and use Zivy. We have a public roadmap as well, which you can contribute to, and uh, send your request. We have a Slack workspace also for people to just like connect directly with our team and share the feedback, and not just via intercom or emails. So that is how we kind of keep gathering feedback, and we keep acting and building things which will make their life better.
Awesome. Hope that answers, Arjun. So another question is, do we have any features where we can see the user adoption matrix, like how many users are actually using ZB and when was the last time they logged in and stuff like that?
Yeah, of course. From an, I think this question is more from a company perspective. If as a company, and say I want to see all the users who are using ZV in the company and how they're using it. Um, as I mentioned, right now ZV is a single user tool. So think of it as like your personal tool. Like if you guys are aware of Superhuman, say for emails, then think of this as Superhuman for Slack. We don't really have like a team feature at this point of time, but a couple of organizations have asked for something like this, where they can have like an admin having a view of how, in terms of kind of sort of stats, right? How people are using it in terms of, has, for example, what is the active usage time, or what is the response rate, some stats around Slack itself, right, for the users. Those things are currently in the discussion of prioritization and to kind of build it out. But right now focus primarily is to make it like super awesome for individuals to use it and see the benefits for themselves. And later on, we also plan to add multi-user capability. For example, say if to-dos are being created in Zivy, either directly by processing the Slack message, or you manually creating it, we should also be able to, sort of collaborate on that to-do, and like assign it to someone else on your team, reach out to them, and have visibility on that. Those things, multi-user capability will come in later, but right now just like a single user tool.
Awesome. And in addition to that, we have like, do we have any in-app guidance for the first-time users or for the new users?
Yes, yes. So once you sign up and just like integrate, you will actually see an in-app demo that happens. Um, and maybe as Sanjeev, I'll send out to you the. Actually, let me put this out here. the link to the playground app. So this is where we can actually just experience Zivy without even integrating to your Slack workspace, just to get a sense of um, like how how the experience is going to be. And we keep this updated. The whatever changes we do on the main app, it automatically flows into the playground app also. So that's the features we'll know.
Awesome. So we have just let me have this link so I can send it later for everyone. So another question is a follow up on the AI training question. So that
Yeah,
how can the customer opt out of Zivy from training its LLM model through the message? Some data could be private or PII.
yeah, yeah. Good question. Of course, like in terms of PI data, as I mentioned, we analyze the PI data. We don't want that PI data to be like really, even though the database is encrypted, to be information to be there. So that has been taken care of, right? The concerns around what happens with the PI data. On the as I mentioned, you don't really have to. Um, the moment you integrate with Zivy, right, what you actually, first of all, what you see is very custom to you, right, as a user, and but by default, whatever comes out in the classification, right, is something which has been modeled over a period of time, right? It's not really done on the data at all. We don't really use your data to go further, model or fine tune across ZV user base as such, right? The only place which it helps is in terms of figuring out the tone of your messaging so that you can do that, right? Other pieces that you can actually influence the classification I was showing is custom rules, which is basically a prompt that actually goes out, and you can change those prompts, right? But there isn't any training on your data set which helps make Zivy better for all of the users across different dogs. Nothing of that sort. We don't need that kind of training to happen at all.
Awesome. So I think we are good with the question. I just have one like how let's say we have ZB in our web page. How can we have this app in our Slack workspace?
Oh, so once you integrate Zivy to your Slack workspace, you will see the Zivy Slack bot directly on your Slack. It's just like any other
Okay.
Slack bot installation that you do. So you don't really have to do anything special on that. And once you turn on the notifications also, so we have an ability to kind of turn off the notifications for urgent messages. So what happens is you also get those notifications on your Slack as also. So you can actually put say ZV into your VIP list and set turn on notifications only for VIPs, right? And then you'll get notifications only from say ZV. Uh,
Awesome. Uh, okay. Any more questions? I think we are good. Wait,
Awesome, great. So yeah, I mean, I would love for you guys because you guys like part of Slack community and heavy users of Slack, and any kind of feedback coming from you folks is going to be super useful. So would encourage if you can just sign up and I'm available. Sanjit can share my contacts as well. Sanjit and I is how we got connected, and then we have been in touch on ZV. So would love to for users to kind of just like try out ZV and share your feedback. We have, as I mentioned, we have 30-day free trial. Um, just gives you enough time, right, to see if it's actually making a difference in your Slack experience.
So I have been using Zivy for like quite a long now. Although the notifications are very limited for me, but yes, the insights and everything I have, like that's great. I don't have to actually open my Slack workspace now. It's just Zivy that I open and that's it. But yes, as you mentioned that the target audience is someone who gets a lot of notifications. Uh, so I think so we can have something like out of all the folks who have joined us, we can have swags for the first two folks who actually goes and installs Zivy in their workspace and uses it and provides a feedback to Vivek, like what can be improved or what has what is awesome in the app, and you guys can take a screenshot of it and share it over on Slack, and we can have swags arranged for you, right? So yeah, I think that's it. The final part is just saying thank you. Thank you, Vivek, for your valuable time. Thank you so much for joining. I think Akshay and Janani, maybe they also leads the Slack community. Maybe they can share this Zivy application with other folks of their communication community as well. And I think you already shared this box link, so we are good there. I'll post the link in the viral email. And yes,
Yeah.
that's it. Maybe I can stop the